Hi, and welcome to the Total Kit Car YouTube channel. My name's Steve Holt, editor of TKC Mag and TotalKitCar.com, and we're about to start another episode in our Total Kit Car History Files series. Without further ado, let me take care of a bit of business first of all. If you haven't already subscribed, please could you do so. Still about 30% of people that watch these videos, and you're welcome obviously, don't subscribe. Doesn't cost you a penny, and it really does help the channel, and it will help us moving forward. I can assure you of that. And if you could also hit that like button, that'd be fantastic too. Anyway, subject to this one is an interesting one. It's almost like the target area that we've got. I could literally put a blindfold on and pin the tail in the donkey, and I'll come up with a winner every time, really. So this time we're looking at the Caterham 21, underrated car. Struggled a little bit during its gestation period, which took a little bit too long, in my humble opinion. But it was a really good car, and it deserved to sell more than the 49-ish. I think it sold than that, really. Anyway, back to the early part of the 90s, and rumours abounded that Caterham was actually working on a second model to join the 7. And following the adage, actually, that I can't assume that everybody knows what I'm talking about. If you're a regular around here, fantastic, and thank you for continuing to support us. Excuse me. But if you're not, then you're probably going to wonder what the heck I'm talking about. And especially if you were looking for a video to help size your wall in advance of some wallpaper. Anyway, Caterham Cars are the kings of the 7. The Caterham 7. They've been making that car since 1973. It's dominated their history, really, obviously, because before that they weren't always sole concessionaires, because Lotus changed their minds a little bit, but they always were working on the car almost since it was launched in 1957. Caterham Car Sales and Coachworks was founded in 1959, so they were also, I believe, if not the first, one of the very first Lotus service centres. Lotus Centres, I think they call them. And they were officially appointed to sell the 7. And if I'm not mistaken, excuse me, the Elan as well. And the Caterham the Lotus Centres that Chapman appointed, I think we're expected to sell Elans too. At least initially, anyway. I'm recording this in February, and I'm just getting over February 2025. That is. And I'm lucky, touch wood, this year I didn't get hit with a horrible chest infection that I did last year, which made me sound like Darth Vader. I've had a little one and a little head cold, but I've put some Vicks on my chest, got my teddy bear out, and Carol's tucked me up in bed just to make sure that I'm all warm and can get better nicely. No, seriously, I've got a tickly cough, so I do apologise. I've got my water, which I forgot last time. But if I have to, if I do cough, I'm trying not to. But I warn you now, I might be. So where is Caterham? Caterham is situated in Surrey. There are actually two parts of Surrey. Excuse me. There's Caterham on the Hill and Caterham Valley. At various times, Caterham Cars populated both. Initially they were based in a lovely old motley crew of units up on a place called Townend, which was just centre of Caterham on the Hill, formerly occupied by one Anthony, best known as Tony Crook, later of Bristol Cars. He moved out, and they pretty much moved in straight away after him. He was a Fraser Nash racer, very good racer, and he serviced and sold and raced a various collection of cars, including a Bristol. That was prior to him taking over the company, and a very handy peddler. But anyway, and I think he was racing a few Fiats, I think, as well, because he certainly became, before Radbourne Racing had the Arbath agency, he certainly was importing Arbaths to the UK. I found a couple of brochures actually the other day. I thought they were Radbourne ones, which are pretty rare in their own right, but they were actually Tony Crook ones, which is good. But he wasn't doing the Arbas from there, I don't think. He moved off to another part of Surrey before obviously taking over Bristol and setting up in Kensington. So Caterham, and there's Caterham Valley. Caterham then, when they sold up, well, when they got the factory at Dartford, they retained Townend for a little while before a Vauxhall garage or Vauxhall dealer in Caterham Valley, down the hill in the valley, Layham's I think they were called, vacated that building, and Graham could see the benefit. Graham Nern could see the benefit of setting up the showroom, a purpose-built showroom indeed, right next to the train station in Caterham Valley. So that's kind of where we are with that. So Caterham refers to the town, or two parts to the town. I think it's a bit like Dallas Fort Worth, but on a smaller scale, much smaller scale. So the Caterham 21 was the car that the rumours abounded about, and it was announced at the British International Motor Show in October 1994. And on the stand they had a beautiful polished aluminium bodied example, hand rolled by none other than Roach Manufacturing down in the New Forest, who still exist. And there are plenty of brilliant companies in the UK, I'm really delighted to say, that can make you a fabulous hand rolled aluminium body for your car or whatever you want, whichever car. Some brilliant ones as well, including Shapecraft. It's one of my favourites, but Roach Manufacturing are arguably right up there as well. And Keith Roach himself did the body for the 21, and indeed it's goodness know what is it, some 30, nearly 40 years. No, sorry, 30 years. Maths has never been the clever point. 30 years since he did that car or that body, and Roach still show it off on their website. So if you visit that, you'll see it there. Questions were asked about the name. Why was it called the Caterham 21? Why wasn't it the Caterham 8 or the Caterham 9? Purely because in 1994, that marked 21 years since Caterham acquired or took over the 7 project. So that's kind of as complicated as it gets, really. It wasn't. It was just simply marking a time in a date in time. 21 was a totally clean sheet design, and development started in January 1994, with Jez Coates, then Caterham's technical guru. Jez is one of the names, shall we say, inverted commas, of Caterham Cars over the years. A very skilled engineer, and they set to in a barn at Jez's home in Essex, assisted by his trusty right-hand man, a lovely bloke called Reg Price, who sadly is no longer with us. Now, Reg, I don't think, and in fact I know, does not get the credit that he deserves in the annals of Caterham's history. A school teacher originally from just over the valley from Caterham on the hill in Merstham. He was a school teacher there, but he'd pop in to see Caterham Cars up on the hill in Townend during school holidays, and he and Graham Nern got on very well. Graham offered him a job. I could see the talent that he had and the enthusiasm he had for the 7. Reg resisted initially, but he did go full time at Caterham Cars. Initially working with Jez's predecessor, Clive Roberts, who went on to bigger and arguably greater things. He went to work for Lotus, worked on the development of the M100 Lotus Elan. Before that was when Lotus were owned by General Motors, and then he was posted to or transferred to Detroit, and he worked on some cars for GM in Motor City, no less. And then when Jez came on board, ex-Leyland Trucks, to take over from Clive, I think they overlapped actually to a certain extent. a little bit, but when Clive moved on, Reg assisted Jez. So the two of them went off to in private, a bit of privacy in Jez's barn to develop the chassis and the underpinnings for the 21. I've read somewhere that the development cost totaled £130,000. Remarkable, really. Equivalent, allowing for inflation, to about 175,000 pounds GBP today, which I think is actually pocket money, unbelievably, when you compare it to other projects that have appeared in recent years. Indeed, Jez told Johnny Tipler in his book Lotus and Caterham 7's Racer for the Road that it was like a boy's dream come true for him. Boy's own dream come true, by the way. Sorry. Um, and he was very excited when Graham told him about the new idea. And he told me, I spoke to him in 2021, and he told me that during that process, obviously they were full on with the 21, but they still couldn't neglect the 7 because there was always new developments for that to take care of. The styling. Now, it's assumed, I think, by some people that Jez did the styling. He didn't. It was done by a chap called Ian Robertson, who trained as an industrial designer on a 3-year course. I think he was at the Royal College of Art. Very versatile chap, because he initially worked at Caterham Cars in the marketing team. And then when in the early 90s, when he pitched for the 21 design and got it, he was working for Haymarket Publishing as deputy news editor on Autocar magazine. Very, very skilled chap, actually. The brief called for him to produce 4 designs, which he did, but both he and the rest of the team, which including Graham Nern, David Wakefield, Jez, and Andy Noble, settled on the first one that he did. As far as they were concerned, it couldn't be bettered. So that's the one they proceeded with, full scale. I don't know if it's clay or foam, but they kind of worked up a model and worked from there. The idea behind it, I think, was for it to be a more practical version of the 7. I think Graham wanted to use the standard 7 space frame, but they couldn't do that because Jez said the body would have just been too low for the 21, so they had to use an amended version of it. But the underpinnings of it were pretty similar, and you could see the outline. And indeed, I think there was probably a bit simplistic, but the primary addition was outriggers to allow for the full body of the 21, which also had doors. First Caterham to have doors, of course, as well as give a little bit of rigidity for the side impact. Created a bit of a wide sill area, which you had to step over to get in. Some people didn't like that, but most just got on with it, and I didn't really find it too much of a hardship. It did mean that ladies wearing skirts could sometimes find it slightly undignified getting in and getting out of the car. And of course, it didn't have. We might as well talk about that now. It didn't have, shall we say? So I said proper windows the other day, which did actually, I reckon, hinder it a little bit. And also because the chassis between the two cars were different, with the 7's front narrower track than the rear, although the 21 was parallel front to back. And Jez said that allowed for extra width at shoulder level, which is important in a car with doors and with a full body. Did, however, feature the same double wishbone front suspension, had a wider anti-roll bar. Vauxhall Calibra rather than standard fare Caterham 7, that they chose a Vauxhall Calibra steering column, as it had, Jez said, and it's quite obvious really why he would want that, better quality stalks. Caterham doesn't necessarily have stalks, indicator stalks and stuff, but they, so we say, sports cars of that type definitely needed them, and he reckoned that the Calibra had the ones that they wanted. Also, the first Caterham to have an adjustable steering wheel, fore and aft. As I said, the first one had, or the first show car had an aluminium body, and it was done really for dramatic effect. It was decided that although the production versions would have 11-piece, I think, GRP body, glass fibre body, that show car would feature a full aluminium body in delicate 16-gauge aluminium. We mentioned Keith Roach did the beautiful work on it. Prior to its launch, Jez anticipated, although he wasn't sure at that time, that the 21 would be available in both turnkey and kit form. Although kit form wasn't written in stone until further down the line, really, because there was initial resistance at Caterham in the hierarchy there to offering it in kit form. But Jez's argument was that as long as they could give kit builders the right quality of parts and components, there shouldn't be a problem. I think they were worried about people maybe not putting together cars of the quality that they really wanted them to be, but they overcame that. Excuse me. The kit version was known as the Clubman, and I'm jumping ahead here, but on launch that cost £18,750, pretty £18,750, which was a very, very comprehensive kit actually. And not much cheaper actually than the anticipated fully built GRP example would cost, which I think was projected to be £19,000. So they were, I think it might have been when the time come to press the pin and actually offer it for sale, I think that price had risen. I'll scan through the notes as I talk and probably be able to answer that one. They did actually were prepared to offer customers an aluminium body if they wanted one. That was an extra £20,000 added to the cost of the car, and that would be an 18, which is slightly more robust than 16. Sitting here in early 2025, writing this, or reading this, £39,000 seemed like a bargain for a Caterham 21 with aluminium body, to be honest with you. I did miss out the part where I mentioned the outriggers taking care of the side impact or helping the side impact issue was honeycomb stroke glass fibre box sections which reinforced that sill area around the outriggers. This was then bolted to the chassis, thus helping with extra rigidity for side impact or possible side impact. They also added substantial diagonal engine braces from the centre of the front bulkhead to just 4 of each, or just behind each suspension unit. I've just now stumbled on my notes and found that the launch price fully built examples were £19,495, so they weren't too far from his projected £19,000 claim or estimate. Entry level car had a 1.6 litre Rover K series producing 115 bhp. They also then offered a super sport version with a K series 1.8 VVC engine delivering probably about 140 horsepower, maybe 145. That was more expensive at 22,995. Although the extra outlay for that, in addition to slightly more power, brought with it a full leather interior, a 6-speed, not a sequential, but a 6-speed H-gate, and a limited slip diff. There was a later edition of a very high performance derivative which I drove. I drove all of them actually. But that VHPD one was pretty spectacular really, even though it was 100 kilos heavier than a comparable 7 with the same engine. I think the car only weighed about sub 700 kilos, so it was hardly lardy, so it went very well indeed. Excellent engine, the VHPD. Styling, I think I look at it sometimes and I still think it's box fresh. I think there was a nod to the Lotus 11 in the styling, which wouldn't surprise me. And I mentioned earlier, those didn't have wind-up windows, which came in for a bit of criticism. But it was a rigid structure, it really was. And the extra 100 kilos, arguably, gave it a more, well, I wouldn't say sophisticated, but a more compliant quality of ride. Their aim was to sell 200, or they could handle capacity of 221s per year. And given that it was designed by Jez or developed by Jez Coates, it was a stylish looking car and based around the all-conquering 7. What could go wrong? So why did they only sell 49 of them until it was quietly withdrawn in 1999? I think many lay the blame squarely at the door of the Lotus Elise Series 1, designed by Richard Rackham and Julian Thompson, although it was the brainchild of then Lotus owner Roman Artioli, who named it after his, or wanted it named after his granddaughter Elisa. Their brief, beg your pardon, called for a basic step-in sports car, and that first broke cover at the Frankfurt show in 1995, in the year after the Caterham appeared. I think also the Caterham took something like 26 months to appear following that first show appearance, which went down really well. And I believe that some orders for it, or potential orders, would have been diverted to the Elise. Really, the first 21s didn't go on sale until spring 1997. The delay, I've heard said that it was due to the time taken to create a suitable interior for the 21. Again, I'm not sure if that's true or not. I remember reading a feature in Philby's Witch Kit magazine in the May 1997 issue where they bemoaned those 2 lost years it had taken for the car to go on sale. And they described it, though, as a 7 for grown-ups, which I'd agree with, really. And it appeared on the front cover. They did plunder the mainstream car parts bins for the 21. Rear light lenses came from, I love playing a guessing game for rear light lenses, that actually came from the Ford Mondeo Mark 1. Rover 200 stroke Metro donated its door mirrors, the Mark II Vauxhall Astra its door handles. Even the Suzuki Cappuccino piped up with its front indicators. Although we mentioned the steering column from the Vauxhall Calibra. Meanwhile, that distinctive curved windscreen was bespoke, and it was produced for Caterham Cars by Triplex. Why didn't it do better? Andy Noble, who now runs Sevens and Classics at Falcombe in Kent, which is literally the back garden of Brands Hatch Circuit. I could quote him really as saying it was almost a very good car, but not quite. He believes the lack of winding windows and being a tad too small inside, and maybe a lack of practicality compared to its rivals. He points at those as sort of reasons, really. It certainly wasn't too expensive, that's for sure. But surely, my argument is it surely deserved better despite those compromises, especially when you note that its main rival, Elise, S1 Elise, I think, sold over 10,000 units, which is serious numbers. Other rivals included MGF and Renault Sport Spider, I think, but it was mainly the Elise that could be said to have done the damage to the sales for the 21. I still don't think it's the disaster that some have claimed. I don't think that at all. Far from it. Let's face it, if they'd have pushed the racing series, which they attempted to do slightly later on, they could have maybe done what Ginetta, pre-Lawrence Tomlinson, Martin Pfaff era, Ginetta did with the excellent G20 race series. If that had carried on, if they could have done something with that, that would have worked beautifully, I think. It would have generated a lot of sales. I was actually looking at a 21 a few days before this piece. And even 26 years at the time of writing in 2025, there's no doubt that time has been kind to it. There are some areas of real beauty on it. I mean, look at the lovely aluminium door hinges. The boot release catch is a beautiful thing. Plus the internal bonnet moulding and things like that were clearly given lots of thought. A Mark II was actually prepared. It was a radical departure. I've never seen a photo, a rendering of it even. And was intended to use a lot of MGF parts for its architecture, including the subframes. And as a result, that would allow them to fit larger engines. Ultimately, I don't think there was any desire within Caterham Cars to launch that and pursue that idea, and it was again gently canned. There was actually a Caterham 21 GTO, That was prompted, I think, by the success of a Belgian race team called GPS Racing, who'd fitted a 21 with a hard top, and I think they raced in the Bell Car race series, and they literally cleaned that series up. Did very well, and that success didn't go unnoticed at Caterham's technical department at the Dartford factory at Kennet Road. Other people had ventured on track with them, I think, as well, but there was no works. There was no works entry of any sort. I don't think there's any race series for competing in the UK, but I may be wrong with that. Um, but Jez was certainly encouraged to create what was called the G21 GTO. It's a more hardcore version. Um, I've seen it written that it was the 21's slightly unhinged brother. Did have more power. It used some interesting facts about that. It used the same engine that the Caterham 7 R500 Superlight R500 was fitted with. That bonkers 230 bhp 1.8 litre Minister Power built K Series X Power K Series, which was a brilliant thing. Body shell was actually fitted with an integral hardtop, and the whole kit caboodle underwent extensive wind tunnel work and testing at Myra. So the nose was revised, the rear as were the rear and the sill sections were also changed, and it also had a carbon fibre rear wing option. It didn't look a bit like the Belgian racer, but it was totally unrelated. Under the skin, the standard 21 suspension was heavily revised. It had completely new geometry and pickup points, while springs were said to be 10% stiffer. And Jez worked with development engineer Charles Hayhurst on the 21 GTO, which had a starting price at just £5 under £40,000. And that was launched at the NEC Motor Show in October 1999. Some conjecture about how many were made, but I think there was definitely two, because I've seen evidence of an orange one and a silver one. But however, if that was true, I'm not entirely sure. I mentioned Reg Price earlier on, and then I switched, probably forgot to develop that idea really. Reg was a lovely old character, didn't really probably like publicity, a diligent, determined worker. Lots of upgrades on the Caterham 7 over the years were due to him really, his tenacity and desire to improve the car. He was a very, very popular member of staff, could speak his mind and probably rub a few people up the wrong way, but people loved him for that. He didn't suffer fools gladly at all. Wasn't coining a cliche, but it's true. And very handy driver. He didn't start racing until he was 40 years of age, bless him, but he did pretty well. And I think he doesn't get enough mentions in dispatches in Caterham's history as he deserves. So here's a little tribute to Reg Price. But anyway, that's the Caterham 21 roundup in a concise form. I hope you'll agree. Apologies for my raspy, slightly nasal voice. I'm just getting over a little cold, as I mentioned earlier on. I don't think I sound quite as bad as I did last year, as I said, where I sounded like Darth Vader. But anyway, I hope it doesn't spoil your enjoyment of this episode. Wherever you are in the world, my voice is about to give up, I think. So wherever you are, moving swiftly on. Wherever you are in the world, I really hope you're having a great day. Thanks so much for visiting and giving us time of your valuable time. And I hope you come back and visit us again soon. That's Steve Hull, over and out.